DeSanto Propane is 4 generations strong as a trustworthy, family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSantoPropane.com for more info or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto Propane.
Do you want to know what's happening in the Finger Lakes? We do too. We're going in depth with decision makers in the heart of upstate New York to get the answers you need. From the team of FingerLakes1.com, this is Inside the FLX.
All right, welcome back to Inside the FLX. It is time for our monthly chat with Auburn Mayor Jimmy Giannettino. Mayor, thanks so much for being here today.
Morning, Josh. How are you?
Good. Let's start with some breaking news. You guys have a press conference coming up in just a couple hours on the state's decision regarding Owasco Lake, you being the city, and then also the town of Owasco. What can you tell us about it?
So Supervisor Ed Wagner, town of Owasco, and myself received a letter from the New York State Department of Health earlier this week saying that the state intends to not move forward with our revisions to the Owasco Lake watershed rules and regulations. As you know, that was a 7-year process that was community driven, that was encouraged and supported by the state of New York, the Department of Health, Department of Environmental Conservation, Department of Ag and Markets. As recent as a few months ago, they were saying that they were going to offer up revisions to what we had sent them. Now, all of a sudden, with no explanation, they're saying that the revisions are no longer needed. So we will be holding a press conference to alert the public of this abdication of the state of New York's responsibility to protect drinking water for 45,000 residents, and we'll be demanding some answers for sure.
I was going to say unexpected, certainly. Was there any kind of signal at all that this would be the action taken, especially given that, if anything, it seems you guys would have been expecting revisions to come back to you at some point?
Yeah, this completely caught us off guard. You know, we've been pretty clear from the beginning that what we sent to the state of New York, as approved by the town of Owasco and the city of Auburn, should have been approved as we sent it to them, because the state was involved in this process. They were there at the table with every community stakeholder, including residents, drinking water consumers, agriculture. The state of New York was there. And what we sent to them should have been passed as sent because they were involved in the process. And again, 7 years later, the Department of Health is saying this whole process wasn't even necessary, despite the fact they encouraged us to do this.
Yeah. Give us kind of, for those who might not be totally plugged in on this one, give us an idea of what a couple of the things that you guys were requesting in this, and then also what the cause was for it. Obviously, I'm assuming harmful algal blooms, but there's probably some other things too, right?
Yeah. So the rules and regs that we have now are from 1984. Things have changed since 1984 on a number of levels, whether it's climate change, whether it's industry within the watershed, whether it's housing within the watershed. Things have changed. And we know that we have a water quality crisis with Owasco Lake, just like all the Finger Lakes. We were the canary in the coal mine back in 2016 when toxins from harmful algal blooms did make it into our water treatment plant. We mobilized immediately. And from that day, we have been the strongest advocates in this state for addressing this issue. And, you know, I say all the time, we did the work. We packaged it up. We handed it to the state of New York. We handed them the superhero costume. They could have gotten the phone booth and put it on and been the superhero, right? We did all the work for them. Instead, they continue to be the villain as far as I'm concerned.
What does it say to you as far as the state, what the state says about its concern regarding environmental issues, especially in the Finger Lakes where it's so essential, clean drinking water, just the health of the region's waters in general versus the actual legislation and action and so forth that we see year in and year out?
Yeah, it's the old Albany double talk is what I like to call it. You know, they're going to tell you, they're going to respond to us today and they're going to tell everybody all the work they've done, all the money they've spent. But the reality of it is that the issue has not improved. In fact, it's gotten worse. And it makes no sense. New Yorkers have a right to clean water. It's enshrined in our New York State Constitution. And that right is being denied. And I'm going to tell you as long as I'm sitting in the chair as mayor of the city of Auburn, I will do everything I possibly can to hold the state accountable. They are abdicating their responsibility. And Josh, the thing is, the Department of Health will say, well, we don't have the authority to do this, right? Let's think back to 2019, early 2020. We had a pandemic. We had a health crisis in this state, and the Department of Health basically shut down this entire state in the interest of public health. We expect them to take the same actions in regard to our water quality. That's all we're asking for. They had the authority then. Why don't they have the authority now?
Without action or without change from the state's perspective here, what are some of the things you're concerned about coming down the line for the city of Auburn and frankly, the town of Owasco as well?
If we lose this lake, we lose everything. It's that simple, Josh. And I just cannot understand it. We've made so much progress locally on so many levels. We've seen a renaissance in our city, we in our downtown, and the city as a whole. We have Micron coming to Central New York. Micron's coming here for one reason, and it's water. We have to get serious about protecting it, both at the state level and the federal level. And, that's going to be our next move, getting our federal representatives involved, because our opinion is that the state of New York is violating the federal Clean Water Act. So we intend to meet with our federal officials as well.
What is, I was going to say, obviously, probably unlikely that we see a full U-turn here from the state. But is that something that you're at least a little hopeful for, perhaps, as we head into the fall and perhaps the next legislative session when some of these issues could become really big sticking points for lawmakers across New York State?
Josh, I try to remain optimistic on this issue. It's increasingly difficult to do so. It seems that those in positions that have the authority to seriously address this lack the political will to do so. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. Let's shift gears here a little bit and talk about another piece of news that broke within the last 48 hours. Bimbo Bakeries will be shutting down its Auburn facility. That's going to impact about 50 workers, according to a WARN notice I got my hands on this morning. Seems to have been a universal surprise to everyone that the facility was going to be shut down. Obviously, it's one of 3 that are going to be shut down that are operated by Bimbo Bakeries. But had you heard any rumblings about this potentially in the lead up to it? And what's your hope now, now that 50 jobs and a bakery that's been operating throughout the course of my lifetime in Auburn won't be operating anymore?
Yeah. So it came as a complete surprise. I found out by a local labor representative who works with that union. He found out 4 hours before that this was going to happen. So there is a misconception in the community that the city didn't do anything to stop this. I literally received the WARN notice in my office yesterday, the day after the announcement. When I did find out about it, I took a few immediate steps. I asked that person for some contacts within the bakery. I called those contacts. They were very clear that they were not allowed to speak to me. They were ordered by ownership not to speak to anybody that called, but they did turn my information over to legal counsel for Bimbo Bakery. In the meantime, I reached out to Kelly King, who is the executive director of Cuga Works. I informed her what was happening, and she immediately jumped into action, and she is standing by willing to help all of these workers that are going to be displaced from their jobs with any benefits that are available and with job placement. I reached out to Senator May, who in turn reached out to Dan Kalinsky from Central New York Economic Development Council. In the meantime, I did receive a call from the legal counsel at Bimbo. He informed me that this decision is final and that there is nothing we can do to reverse that. I made it very clear to him my displeasure, the fact that they did not even give us an opportunity, the fact that we found out the way we found out. But I did appreciate him reaching out to me, and he did give me his word that he will work with, that the company will work with Cuga Works to assist these workers with job placement, that they will maintain the building until they sell it. That's a concern of mine. I don't want the building falling into disrepair. So I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there are 49 people here whose lives have been upended. My heart goes out to them. We will do everything we possibly can locally to assist them as they transition. But this wasn't even a corporate America decision. This is a corporate Mexico decision. And the thing is, they had their earnings meeting the night before. They're doing fine. They actually were more profitable than they were last year. So this is unfortunate, and we will do everything we can to assist those men and women who are being impacted by this.
I'm curious, and it's normal, right, to see the lash out, I guess, from residents to city officials or community officials wherever something like this happens. But I'm curious, and this is kind of a rhetorical one, but what is a city supposed to do when a decision is made 1,000+ miles away about the future of a facility there that may mean dozens of jobs, but outside of that, it doesn't seem like there's much on the surface that you guys could potentially do. How do you respond to that criticism when it comes in? Because, in a lot of ways, you said you did everything you could do, and outside of, politely asking, how much more is there that could be done?
Yeah, I did everything I possibly can do. And that's why I made it clear last night at City Council. I'm happy for the opportunity to explain that again today. People are going to believe what they want to believe, and then that's their right. But I know that I did everything I possibly could. Again, it is disappointing that they didn't reach out to us earlier. I sit on Auburn Industrial Development Authority, so does Councilor Cuddy, and so does the very labor leader who represents those workers. So if they had at least come to us, we could at least talk through it to see what the concerns were, if there was anything we possibly could have done prior to this happening.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about some construction or some road work and some other things going on around the city. First up, State Street is getting some love thanks to a new $570,000 deal. What's happening there? What's the focus? Yeah.
So State Street is, I view it as an extension of our downtown. There is a block of commercial businesses down there. Obviously, you have Curly's Restaurant, who the new owners put a tremendous amount of money into. They've revitalized that building. It's I can see it from my office window. It's busy all the time. It's an Auburn institution. That section of the street is in really bad shape. Beyond the bridge, which we replaced a few years ago. From Perrine Street to the city line has already been done. It's time to finish this up and, try to extend all the good things that are happening in downtown down through that district. This money comes from the state. Oftentimes I am critical of the state, so I want to give praise when praise is due. Senator May has been a tremendous ally in trying to increase infrastructure funding, specifically for roads. And the state has delivered on that, and they should be applauded for it. And we're able to really expand our road work this year. We received a report at earlier city council meeting this year. The roads in this city have drastically improved over the last 6 to 8 years, and part of that is due to the increased funding from the state of New York.
Yeah. Also, another road that's going to be getting a big overhaul here in about a year, I suppose, would be the arterial. Some temporary work was done earlier this month. What can you tell us about that bigger project that's coming next year? What's sort of the big picture for that?
Yeah, so we're hopeful that this work will take place next year. Our engineering department is in constant communication with the State Department of Transportation. The arterial is a state highway. It is in terrible shape. It's been years since there's been any work done on it. Now, they have been in Auburn doing the preliminary work. There is some sewer and water infrastructure that goes under that road that we've been doing prior to this work getting done. But it'll be a great improvement to the city. It's a handful of roads like North Street that is a state route that needs some work. Lake Ave, which leads to the high school. But this will be a tremendous improvement to the city of Auburn for sure.
How big is that one to get that one checked off the list, to at least know that at some point here the work is going to happen? It's not necessarily something that you have to keep hoping happens down the road.
Yeah, it's huge. There's no way that we could do that locally due to the associated price tag. Yeah. And again, it thousands of cars a day travel that route, so it's going to be a huge improvement.
Yeah, and finally here we've got some sidewalk work. Owasco and South Fulton Streets, I believe, if I recall correctly. Mm-hmm. What's the timeline for this one? When are we starting that?
Hopefully sometime soon. It'll hopefully be done by fall. This pot of funding comes from the federal government, HUD, Community Development Block Grant Funding. It's always difficult to say that. It really is CDBG. And, we maximize every dollar from that pot of money. We use it on playgrounds. We use it on sidewalks. We use it for mortgage assistance to assist human services agencies in the city of Auburn. We have a tremendous track record in our city of really maximizing that program. So there was some additional funding in there, and we were able to get additional sidewalks done for neighborhoods in need.
And let's shift gears and talk about another project. It isn't a city project per se, but I want to get your perspective here now that we know it's moving forward. The homeless shelter. It is moving forward, as I just said. It's a county project, but obviously there was a lot of city feedback on it. My question for you is, cities big and small are dealing with growing issues around the unhoused population and how to deal with that. Can you just talk to us for a minute about what you see day to day in a city like Auburn on this front, and why a project like this is helpful in dealing with the bottom line, the bottom day-to-day impact of homelessness in a place like that?
Sure. So the city of Auburn is like every city across this country. I don't even want to say city, every community, I think, across this country, post-COVID, where there is a serious housing crisis, which is contributing to increased rates of homelessness. I think it's shocking for people in Auburn because we've never really had the issue to this level, right? It's always existed, but never to this level. It is technically a responsibility of the county because they oversee DSS. But let's be clear, it's a human issue. So we all have an interest in addressing this issue. Currently, there is no facility adequate to address the issue in Cuyahoga County. The county is spending upwards of $3 million a year to house folks in motels, where there is no supervision, where there is no connection to services, right? So the goal should always be, when we're helping an unhoused individual, to correct that situation, connect them with services, give them the tools necessary to get into the workforce, and to get them stable housing, right? That piece is missing right now. I view it as a puzzle, and there's all these pieces. We're just trying to put it together collectively. And a homeless shelter is part of that. And there has been opposition to it. Early on, trying to stay in my lane, but recognizing that there was opposition to it. We sat down and we talked to the developer, we talked to the county, and we said, is there a different location? And, they came up with a different location. Unfortunately, it had to go to the zoning board because that location wasn't zoned for it. And folks who were opposed to it on Grand Ave showed up, as did other folks that were opposed to it at the alternative location. And zoning is a little more difficult than planning because you have to show approval in the community for a zoning change, right? And that just didn't exist. So the developer and the county went back to the planning board. Grand Ave is zoned for a homeless shelter, and the planning board made a decision that they felt was legally sound without putting the city in a legal predicament, right? I'm hopeful that all the parties can continue to work together to address concerns of the neighbors. But the reality is we do have a homeless crisis, just like every other city across this country. And, the county is trying their best to address that.
Yeah. Earlier this month, an illegal cannabis shop was shut down in the city after you received a tip about it operating inside the city. Talk to us a little bit about that. That's unusual.
Yeah. So I received an email, I think back in February, from a mom who was desperate because she knew that her underage son was going to at least one smoke shop here in town and was buying illegal cannabis, and he was underage. None of these smoke shops are licensed to sell cannabis even to people who are of age, let alone somebody who is underage. This mother went to the shop and approached the people working there and asked them to please stop. And I won't repeat what they said to her, but they were not nice to her and they did not comply. So she reached out to me. And as a parent, I was infuriated. And I reached out to our police chief. I explained what was going on. At that time, there was talk that the state of New York was going to change the enforcement laws surrounding cannabis, because at the time, OCM, Office of Cannabis Management, was the only agency that could do anything about that. And they were going to shift some control to local governments. So the police chief got to work. He worked with the Finger Lakes Drug Task Force. They visited every single smoke shop in the city. The county sheriff did the same. And they were able to garner enough evidence that these smoke shops were selling to folks who were underage. We provided all that evidence to the Office of Cannabis Management. They showed up July 2nd with 60 state police investigators. They visited every smoke shop in the city of Auburn and in the county. 3 of them were shut down. They continued to be shut down. The property owners are going through the legal process of evicting those business owners. And, I just hope that we've made it clear that we are not going to tolerate the illicit sale of cannabis in this city, especially to minors. There is a legal process for people to go through to obtain licenses. It is our understanding that there are 2 pending or maybe even approved licenses in the city of Auburn. I'm hopeful that once those businesses open, that will put the clamp down on the illicit market. But I just want to recognize Police Chief Jim Slayton, the Finger Lakes Drug Task Force, and the Office of Cannabis Management for working together and for addressing the concerns of parents in this community.
We've been hearing from law enforcement agencies across the state who have said, and you kind of referenced it there, that the state's cannabis enforcement rules and regs are maybe a little bit unclear or kind of put local law enforcement agencies in a predicament when it comes to trying to enforce. From your perspective, does it seem like enforcement is too reliant on OCM and doesn't give, the sheriff's office or, the Auburn Police Department enough latitude to be able to act when they see something or when they find out about something like this?
I will say that it was that way. I think with the changes that came down in this budget process, they've addressed that. The legalization of cannabis in the state is like every other statewide initiative that takes place. The first governor who surrounds himself or herself with people from local government and asks, how is this decision going to affect the people you serve, will be the most successful governor in the history of this state. It blows my mind. They never cease to amaze me, Josh. I think we're the 14th state that has legalized cannabis. You think they would at least look at the problems that other states encountered and proactively address them. But that's water under the bridge. I feel that we have necessary tools now to enforce it, but it becomes a drain on our resources.
Yeah.
Right. That's the bottom line, and it affects the quality of life of the people that we've been elected to serve. We're the ones that hear about it. Right. But oftentimes we don't have the ability to adequately address the problems that we're hearing about. But we continue to fight, and this is what we're put here to do, and we'll continue to do it.
All right, Mayor, thanks so much for the time. Best of luck this afternoon at the press conference.
Thank you, Josh. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks for watching and listening to this episode of Inside the FLX. Check the show notes for links to everything we discussed today. And remember, new episodes of the show drop every Monday on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the iHeartRadio app. If you have a question or a suggestion for a future episode, email news@fingerlakes1.com and download the fingerlakes1.com app for the latest breaking news. For the entire team here, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.